Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Max Helmer is a former CrossFit gym owner, lifelong athlete, and host of the Low Carb Consultant Podcast, which is absolutely fantastic and features many of our former guests. After years of battling chronic dieting, weight fluctuations, and inflammatory health issues, Max discovered the power of a low carbohydrate nutrition and intermittent fasting in 2018, transformations that reshaped both his health and his perspective. Today, he interviews leading doctors, athletes, and coaches to uncover the most effective strategies for health, longevity, and performance, bringing practical and science-backed insights into his audience. Based in Texas with his wife and two children, Max balances podcasting and content creation with his passions for cooking, meal prepping, training in his garage, and spending time with family. His mission is simple: help others cut through the noise and discover what truly works for sustainable health and performance. You can find him on his social media outlets, on Instagram at the Low Carb Consultant, and on YouTube at Max Helmer, the Low Carb Consultant. Max Helmer, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Oh my gosh, Casey, what a great intro, man. Thank you so much. That was amazing.
It is an honor to host you. I have a little bit of a bone to pick with you getting started here.
Sure.
We are going to be coming up on our 5-year anniversary of releasing our episode. We started in October of 2020. We've been able to do episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we've kept that cadence ever since. And so by the time this episode comes out, we're going to celebrate our 5th-year anniversary of the podcast. And I'm making some like special episodes and repurposing some content to kind of celebrate. And one of those is re-releasing our original episode, the very first episode that we ever did. And it is so cringy, dude. It's so bad. I feel terrible for all the people who are maybe nobody's listening to this today because they already listened to our first episode. The bone I have to pick with you is I listened to your first episode on your show, and it's awesome. It's so good. Like, audio quality is great. You asked great questions. Wasn't cringy at all. You hosted Bronson Dant, who I love, and you had an amazing conversation. Like, that sucks that you jump into podcasting and already you're like great at it. Like, that's terrible.
Yeah, and like I was telling you before we recorded, I still don't know what I'm doing. I'm just having a lot of fun doing it, and yeah, hopefully the stuff. I'll be honest though, even when I go back and I look at that first episode, there are a lot of things I have changed and done differently since then, because parts of it are cringy to me. You know, I've got some language that I use that I'm not a fan of. You know, I say like and kind of a lot, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta really, really work on that. But I appreciate that you, for sure, with as many episodes of that you have done. I really appreciate that coming from you. That means a lot to me. So thanks, man. I'm just trying to get better.
Well, even today, I'm like stumbling through your introduction and made several errors just in the introduction itself. And you do a great job. Like I said, I think you're a natural at interviewing. It's one thing to, have the good audio quality, to have good, picture. Your YouTube's really great, but also you do a great job of asking questions. And I think it's interesting when you invite people on that you may or may not disagree with on certain things, yet still give them the space to kind of explain themselves. And that's happened several times on your show. And I enjoy that. I kind of appreciate it. It can feel awkward as the host because you feel like whoever your guest is a reflection of what your opinion has to be. And that's just not the case. And I really like how you are able to allow space for that.
No, I appreciate that a lot, and that's what I really try to focus on is, really the podcast is bringing on, like you said in the intro, experts, doctors, trainers that are in these different low carb spaces, ketogenic spaces, and some of them are not even in low carb spaces at all. I've interviewed some pretty big guys in the CrossFit industry, which is where I kind of come from, but it's really, for me, trying to be as neutral as possible and just really understanding the guest, their thoughts, their ideas, because a lot of these guys are obviously way smarter than I am, and to be honest with you, I learn a lot from these podcasts. That's kind of like the lucky side benefit. Maybe you've realized this doing this for as long as you have over the years, but I've been very lucky to interview some pretty big people, and you even more than me. And it's almost like just a side benefit, being able to pick some of these people's brains and hear their thoughts and ideas and perspectives. And that's really what I try to do. I try to keep my thoughts to myself unless they, ask me what I'm into or or how I think about certain diets. I'll certainly lay out my thoughts and opinions, but I more so try to have it be a platform to where they can express, their perspectives the most,
Yeah, no, it's great. Even the last episode that you dropped as of this recording is with Maria Emmerich, and she specifically mentioned a disagreement that she had with Dr. Kiltz. I've been able to meet both of these people. I love these people. I love all the people in the low carb community. I think it's great that we can have discussions inside the community. And yeah, we may not agree about everything, but there's space for that. And she can say, like, no, I think you're wrong about this without it being taken personal or whatever. And again, it's two amazing, wonderful people who are both very, very smart. Don't always have to have the same opinion. It's great.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And to be honest with you, I didn't know how much disagreement there was in the space. And obviously, I definitely know and understood that a lot of these individuals, Maria Emmerich, Craig Emmerich, Dr. Kiltz, but both of them have been on the podcast now. They have these different views on things, and that's okay. But I didn't really know that that conflict existed in the space until like I was, got the chance to interview them. But it's very real. But I think it's kind of like politics in a way, I think it's okay to have these open and honest discussions about, what you're into, what we feel like works, what doesn't. And, we can always agree to disagree. Right. But, again, that's why I fall back on my philosophy of these diets are tools. That's why I really think a lot of these diets are tools. Like you've got the people in the carnivore camps, you got the people in the keto camps, you got the people in the low carb camps. And then there's all these other, you've got like strict carnivore and all these different things. But, the one thing I try to do just personally in my belief and from where I come from is I just don't want to get married to these diets. I really don't. I don't want to get religious about diet. I really don't. I think we should use these diets as tools because that's exactly what they are. We want to use them as tools to our benefit and flex them periodically or cyclically to get the most out of it based off of what we are trying to do, what our interests are. Right? Like our body changes, our interests change, our hobbies change. You might be into bodybuilding one year, then you sign up for a half marathon or a marathon, then you might get into high rocks. You're getting older, right? We're all getting older. The body I have right now at 40 years old was not the body I had at 35 or 30. So it only makes sense that a lot of these diets, like we don't just do like carnivore for 10 years. And if it works for you, by the way, if carnivore works for you and you've done it for 10 years, I think that's fantastic. More power to you. But at the point in which carnivore stops working for you, and whatever that issue is, whether you're getting, electrolyte imbalances, hormonal issues, don't be so married to the diet where you just carnivore harder. Come to the realization that something might need to change, reevaluate, tinker with your diet. And I honestly think that's the best path forward. I really do,
I love that. Yeah. Last time I was at the Hack Your Health conference in 2024, there was kind of a sentiment among me and kind of the people that were attending that was expressed. And I see both sides of it for sure. And I don't exactly even know what my opinion is on it. That like the comment was made that I feel bad for the average attendee who's going to all these different things. And it's like, okay, Sally Norton just told me that I shouldn't eat spinach because of oxalate. This next person said I should be eating lots of dark leafy greens because it's good for eyesight. I went to this one panel and they said you have to eat high fat. And then Maria Emmerich just said you need to eat high protein. And so I understand where the average person could get a little bit confused.
Sure.
But I think I'm kind of like you, where like I would rather somebody hear all of the things and then decide what's going to be best for them. They may need to wade through a whole bunch of stuff, but if you get indoctrinated, like you said, religiously, that this is the one diet you should do and every other diet sucks, then I think you're at a disadvantage.
And that's the tricky thing too, right? Like you're going to all these, you're talking to all these different experts, or you're hearing a lot of these different experts talk, and you're saying, Sally Norton says, don't have spinach because of the oxalates, and we want to avoid nuts and all these types of things. And I think all of it is good information. I also think too, like from just a very just real basic standpoint is like, what does logic tell you? What does your no pun intended. What does your gut tell you? But like, yes, does spinach have oxalates in it? Does that mean that you should just completely cut it out and, plants are trying to kill us, that whole thing? Like, I don't necessarily listen, like if you're eating like steak salads with spinach, that is a better route than pizza and pasta, right? Or cake, right? That's just kind of what I think about it. And also too, like, it's just, it's the trade-off type of situation, because it's like everyone's got their different thoughts on what to eat, how to eat, and I appreciate all the perspectives, but it's like, from my own standpoint, is like, what's really gonna be the best for me, what's gonna be the best for my lifestyle. What's going to give me the most flexibility and comfortability moving forward, and just be able to enjoy my life. And if you want to have spinach, even though there's oxalates in there, like, man, have some spinach. You know what I mean? So I just take all of the perspectives, as much as I appreciate them, and I appreciate the guests and their knowledge. I take them with a grain of salt, and I take the points and I massage them into my life best as how I see fit.
Love that. Yeah, I love that. As much as I love Dr. Chafee, and we've hosted him on our show many times, and the idea of plants are trying to kill you, I always try to just take that sentiment and just tweak it. It sounds so personal. Plants are not trying to kill you. Plants try to protect themselves, and
yes,
it's not about you. It's so entitled to think that, like, you can just, first of all, you can just take plants and manipulate them however you like, but also that they're like attacking you. No, they're just trying to protect themselves. They don't care about you. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't like as much the sentiment like they're out to get you, they're out to attack you. It just feels so like personal, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and on that point, like, I don't like that slogan, "The plants are trying to kill you." Again, like, I think someone is better off eating spinach than they are like a batch of cupcakes, or a pizza. Like, but I will say this, like, um, I kind of forgot what I was going to say there. But yeah, anyways, I thought I felt like I had a good direction, and I kind of just lost what I was going to say. But at the end of the day, here's what I was going to say. I don't think plants are trying to kill us. I really don't think that's the case. Like you said, plants have defense mechanisms. But what I have done over time, and what I just noticed in my own personal life, is there's a distinction between plants and leaves and vegetables, right? So I think vegetables are fine, but I have seen a lot of benefit from taking spinach out of the diet, and leaves in general, like salad leaves, lettuce, like all those types of things. I have noticed benefits in going that route, but like, I have veggies in my diet, like, I have carrots, I have veggies, I've got, cucumber, pico de gallo on meat. Like, it's the best thing ever. So again, I don't think plants are trying to kill us, but on that note, I do feel like the leaves aren't, in my opinion, like, I have just noticed a lot of benefit from a digestive standpoint, especially with spinach, taking spinach out of my diet, but veggies for sure are fine. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, got it. No, I appreciate that. And that is the one food that if somebody asks me, I'm not going to go out and tell people this, but if somebody asks me if there's like one thing they shouldn't eat, I will probably say spinach. You can find other things other than spinach and not miss it, and probably notice a benefit with the other stuff. You're right. Like, and you're right. Like, if you have a spinach salad every now and again, is that going to be a problem? Like, no, probably not. If you're taking handfuls of it and blending it every single morning with almonds and beets and whatever, like, I wouldn't do that,
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. Okay. Before we jump to your story, I do have a podcasting question for you while we're on the topic, and it's a two-parter. So you mentioned the lessons that you learned through podcasting. So the first question is, what is a lesson that you've learned from a guest? Like, they told you something factual and you're like, oh, I didn't know that, and you applied it and really saw some benefit. And the second thing is more just on the podcasting site itself. What lesson have you learned in your own personal life that podcasting itself has taught you?
Wow, that's a good one. Well, going back to that first question, the one that popped up into my mind immediately, and to be honest with you, like, after I really sat and thought about it, there's probably like a solid lesson from every podcast. One that comes up into my mind, and I was actually thinking about this today, was the one I did with Craig Emmerich. And we were talking about like autophagy. And what he was saying was, from based off of like a lot of the data and the research and the science that he sees on his end, really what increases autophagy the most is not doing more fasting. It's actually strength training. And that one kind of blew me away because I had always thought like, the way to, based off everything that's out there, the way to increase autophagy the most is to increase the fasting length, right? Like maybe fast deep into like a full day, 36 hours, you can get into some deep autophagy. But what he was telling me was the best way to see big bumps in autophagy is not just fasting more, it's actually weightlifting and strength training. And that actually surprised me. That was a big one.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, then on the podcasting side, like hosting the podcast, doing the podcast, what's a lesson you've learned that's been really helpful in your life?
Man, that's a good one. I would say just in general, and I know we were chatting about this a little bit earlier, but really listening and taking in the perspectives of other people has taught me a lot. And that's one of the, I think we're all very quick sometimes, maybe not all of us, but me for sure in the past, especially early on in my journey, which we can get into here if you want. I was definitely the guy that was like shouting things from the rooftop, like, keto is best, carnivore is best, cut out the carbs, like you feel amazing, one meal a day, intermittent fasting, and over time, as my body has changed and, gotten older and evolved and adapted, just like everybody else's body does, I've kind of learned that, that the diet will naturally have to change and evolve as well. And being able to interview some of the people, just like we've had a lot of the same guests on, being able to get the perspectives of these people, I feel like I'm in a very, very unique position to where, a really awesome position where I'm able to take these little tidbits from Bronson Dant, from Maria Emmerich, from Craig Emmerich, from Dr. Kiltz. And then I'm able to, my goal really is to put a lot of this information out there so people can kind of cut through the noise a little bit. But it's really taking the information from a lot of these experts and massaging little bits into my life. Like that's the unique opportunity that I have doing this. And I'm sure you might feel the same way interviewing who you're interviewing, but taking these little bits of information and massaging them into not just my diet, but to my life, my family relationship, my relationship with my kids, and my wife. It's really helped my life. Starting the podcast has really helped my life a lot in terms of, and we can talk about this later on, but just having more purpose, and I would say that's one of the big things that I've taken away from it is I don't know if that sounds selfish at all, but it has basically opened my eyes and allowed me to live, in my opinion, like a little bit more of like a personal, purposeful life than I was before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I absolutely love that. And maybe it is selfish for us to think that, but I totally agree with you. To be able to push record on some of these conversations and create something that lives on is very special. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed your podcast so much. I've been listening to episodes that you have been hosting. Haven't really heard much about your own personal story and been hosted. So I'm really curious to hear, like, how did you get into the space to begin with?
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting because my personal journey, not to go like too far back here, but I feel like I need to in order to lay out the land the best way. So I was always, if you go to my Instagram, I mean, I'm an active guy. I work out every day. It's not just about like looking good and feeling good. Working out for me is my therapy for sure. And I've always been like I've always been an active person. And what happened was early on in childhood, like most kids, I was diagnosed with ADD and ADHD. I was put on Ritalin probably in the first or second grade. And I took Ritalin or Adderall. I was switched to Adderall in high school, but I took Adderall all the way up until I was 30 because I thought that I needed it. If only I would have known about ketogenic diets before that, right? But I can touch on that a little bit later on. But what happened was, so I was medicated very early on. And, my mom, my mom was just trying to raise the best kid she possibly could. My parents were going through a divorce. Like, she was going through her own stuff. And the doctor's like, hey, your kid's got to be on this medicine. She didn't know. She was just trying to do the best that she could with what she had available. But what happened to me was, as my body started to grow and develop around the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, what happened was the Ritalin is a stimulant, just like Adderall, right? It suppresses the appetite. And what happened was, like around the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the Ritalin would wear off towards the end of the day, and I would go on these like binge eating episodes, right? And what happened was, I was starting to gain weight. As active as I was, I played like every sport you can imagine. I played football, I played ice hockey, I swam, I played water polo, basketball, you name it, baseball, I did it all. But what was happening was, because my diet was so bad, and the Adderall and the medication was wearing off and causing me to go on these binge eating episodes, and I was asking my mom to like go to McDonald's, and I was snacking all the time. This was happening in the 6th grade. By the time I got to the 8th grade, I was the fat kid in the friend group. So which I never used to be. But all of a sudden, over like a 3-year period, I was the chubby kid. I was like the butt of the jokes. And, I would laugh and play along, but like deep down, it was kind of getting at me a lot. Like, my nickname in junior high was Nacho Man, because I would have nachos every single day at lunch with a bag of Funyuns. This is my diet: nachos, bag of Funyuns, and like a root beer or Dr. Pepper. I think it was root beer, actually, but that was my lunch.
All the food groups you just named there.
Yeah. And by the time I was in the 8th grade, I was like the fat kid in the friend group. And I'm really glad, to be honest with you, I'm glad that happened to me, because if you talk to anyone that's really passionate about what we do, everyone's got a story, and everyone has spent some time not looking or feeling their best. That's why we do what we do. Like, I don't know your personal journey, but in terms of a lot of the people I interview, they have some trials and tribulations that have happened in their life that cause them to be, the David Goggins type of runner, or, what I mean, the way that they work out, the way that they do Ironmans, the way that they eat, the way they take care of their body. It's because of something that happened to them early on in their life that changed them, right? And I'm glad I went through that period, because it was a period of life that was important, because you're going through puberty. Girls are starting to notice you. And I was this fat kid all of a sudden in the 8th grade. And the best thing my mom ever did for me, though, was she was like, hey, when you get to high school, you're going to play like high school sports. Because for a while there, I was an active kid, but as I started putting on weight, I didn't want to play sports anymore. It was uncomfortable to run. My knees were hurting because I had so much inflammation in my body. Like, I couldn't even run anymore. So I stopped playing sports. And I was like just skateboarding with like the skateboarding guys. And she's like, when you go to high school, your freshman year, you're gonna play sports. And so I'd always swam, so I started playing water polo. And once I started playing water polo my freshman year, I started to lose weight, and I started working out with my dad, lifting weights. That's when I got into weightlifting, freshman year. And that's when my body started to change. And the biggest light bulb was, girls were starting to notice me. And I know that might sound funny to a lot of people, but coming from a place where you were being the fat kid and the girls were making fun of you, to all of a sudden like being the in shape tan water polo guy, and girls are handing you notes like during passing periods, and like notes saying like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? I was just like, oh, wow, this is great. And that basically from there kind of started my journey. And from there, like throughout college, worked out. And then we ended up we moved to Las Vegas around 2010, got into CrossFit, opened up a CrossFit gym. If you want, we can chat about that for a little bit. And then what happened was, and then I had another period I was fat. So I owned the gym for a handful of years, and I was out in Las Vegas. My wife and I, we got married. We wanted to move back to San Diego. And so I sold my position in the gym and I got back into the corporate world. And what happened was I fell back into some of the old habits from earlier on. I started eating bad. I started, going out after work with the guys, not going to the gym, going to the bar, having beers. And what happened was, as the next couple years progressed, I would say up until maybe 2017, I was significantly overweight and out of shape. I had stopped going to the gym, and basically what happened, I lost sight of myself. Like I was the really in shape gym trainer, the CrossFit gym owner that ran all the classes, worked out all the time, to now going into this corporate world where, you've got some bad habits, all those types of things. And like I remember I was buying like fat jeans because I was embarrassed. But going into the corporate world, having a couple kids, that'll do that for you. Like my life was different, And by the time it was 2018, I got to this point where I was so uncomfortable in my own skin. Like when I sat down in a chair like this, I could feel my man boobs pouring over onto my stomach. I felt gross. I had horrific skin issues because my diet was so bad, inflammation in the body. And I was just like, what happened to me? I was the in shape guy. And what happened was it started to remind me of that episode when I was like in junior high, when I was the fat kid. I was like, I became the fat person again. Like, how did I let myself get to this point? And then from there, I made like this little vow to myself where it's like, I'm getting my life and I'm getting my body back because I feel like trash. And that's when I started going on this low carb diet journey, going into, ketogenic diets. And from there, it's like, I've just tested out all these different diets and ran through these diets over time. And I think all of these diets, we can break them down one by one if you want, but I think, again, that's why I have my philosophy on a lot of these diets or tools, because your body will evolve. But what I noticed was when I started in 2018 going on this journey, the biggest thing I noticed going ketogenic was that little kid that was on Adderall. It opened up a different part of my brain. That was the wildest part about it when I started going on this journey and cleaning up my diet. It's like I had the ability to think and perform at like a rate that I never had the capability to do because my diet was bad when I was younger, but I was also eating foods that weren't allowing me to get into like a ketogenic state of mind, if that makes sense. And going on these diets just really opened my eyes in regards to how crazy food is and how much it can impact not just how you look, but how you feel and how you think. And then from there on out, I was sold, man. I was just sold.
That's amazing. Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. I certainly had the same experience to some degree when I, went ketogenic, but when I transitioned onto the carnivore diet 6.5 years ago, I noticed the same thing. And that's my strongest motivator to stay on the diet. Is it's great for a lot of things, but mentally to have the anxiety that I didn't think I had drop out all of a sudden was just so worth it. So yeah, I really appreciate that journey. And maybe that would be a good thing to do, is going back in time. Maybe we can talk about some of the transitions you had on some of those diets. And you can explain, like, if you could tell us, like, why you decided to try a certain diet, what were some of the pros and what were some of the cons, and why you then decided to move off of them over time.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I always, even through my CrossFit days, and CrossFit, I was in CrossFit from like 2010 to 2015. And then 2015 was when I got into the corporate world. I had always played around with the paleo diet, was a big one, and I had tried. So when I got it back, when I left the CrossFit world, got into the corporate world, I started trying to get back on some of these diets, but for some reason, they just were not working for me. I was having like gut issues. a lot of gas trying to bring in certain veggies back into the diet. And it was for a handful of years, like 2 years, I was trying to figure out, the right type of veggies to eat, like all those types of things. And then I started hearing about in 2018, like ketogenic diets and carnivore diets. And so what I did was I basically just started. So I went down to one meal a day. And I started eating just straight like burger patties, ground beef. And the first thing that I noticed was I felt amazing. Like within a handful of days, I felt amazing. But what was wild was the weight on the body just started melting off. And it completely changed my body composition, completely changed my, the way that I looked. And I was like, oh my God. I have always, with just my body type, I've always carried like a lot of water on my body. And obviously when you go like low carb, ketogenic, carnivore, you do flush out a lot of that water. But the one thing that I noticed once I was on the diet for a period of time was just like not having that extra water weight on. It just gave the body like a completely different look. It's like just by removing another 10 pounds of water weight, you just have a completely different look. And I was just like, I've never seen veins in my arms before. Even when I was doing CrossFit, like I never looked like this. Like I had abs. I was like, this is crazy. Like these diets are magical. But then what happened was over time and just doing the diets long enough. And again, this is why I have my philosophy on diets or tools is, I was running into long-term sustainability issues with like being on the diet constantly, playing around with cheat days on the weekends, all that type of stuff. And what was really starting to happen to me, and it was a very similar situation, I would say, to Paul Saladino, was on the carnivore diet, two things were starting to happen to my body. So one, if I was consuming too much fat, it was sending me straight to the bathroom. Like if the fat in a meal was like at a certain like threshold or certain amount of grams of fat, it was sending me straight to the bathroom. And the other thing I started to notice, and this is where I started to get into like electrolyte, balancing out your electrolytes, is I was starting to get like crazy restless leg syndrome at night. And so when I started to do a lot of research, basically what I noticed was because when you don't have carbs in the body, you don't have that water weight I was talking to you about, right? And you're also depleted on sodium, magnesium, potassium, all the electrolytes. It was causing a lot of issues. So what I did was I had to start playing around with these diets and bringing some carbs back in just to give the body a little bit more balance. But I wanted to be careful with the carbs because I loved the effect of what like a ketogenic state gave my mind and a lot of that. So I'm still at the same where I still massage carbs into my body today. If I have a night of restless leg syndrome, which I still get, I know it's because I'm depleted on electrolytes or I haven't taken in enough salt. But what I do a lot of the times is I'll have a little bit of rice, like a cup of rice, like 50 grams, which is not that, which is, 50 grams of carbs from rice is like not that crazy. But what it does is it helps to retain some of the water in the body and the electrolytes. And like, I don't have restless legs and syndrome anymore. So I've just over time learned to play around with these diets and have enough carbs to where I can feel the way that I want to feel, but I still get the benefits of having trace ketones. No, I'm definitely not in a deep state of ketosis anymore. That's for sure. And do I miss that? Yes. But, I'm the way in which I eat and my meal frequency, like I wake up, I don't have breakfast. I drink 20 ounces of water with electrolytes in it, get electrolytes in it right in the beginning of the day. I might have a cup and a half of coffee, and then I work out fasted, and then I'll eat like a meal at lunch and then a meal at dinner time. I'm a 2 meal a day guy. but I've just found the balance in the meal frequency and the types of foods that works for me to allow me to be producing trace amounts of ketones. And again, like I said, definitely not in deep ketosis, but it allows me to feel the way I want to feel. It allows my brain to work the way I want it to work. And it allows me to get, because again, like I don't really have a lot of off days working out. We can talk about working out here in a bit, but working out is my therapy. Like I have to get a workout in every single day. I have to go into that garage and kick my ass just for an hour every day because it's just what I need to do. And it allows me to do all the things I want to do. And that's kind of like the balance I've struck for myself, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense. I wish more people would know that. I was recently talking with Michael Coomer, who was on the show, about a similar journey that he's had. It feels like this, like you start really wide with your diet. You're eating a lot of processed crap and just eating anything. And over time, you learn that if you dial that in and get more and more narrow with your diet towards something that looks like a ketogenic or carnivore style diet, you're eating less and less things, but you're feeling better and better and better all the time. But I also notice a pattern that once you get there, most people can then start to open back up for other things. Is it going back all the way to ultra processed foods and Funyuns and root beers at lunch and nachos? Like probably not. That's probably never going to come back. But there is this effect of like, yes, you have to be strict for a while for most people, but at the same time, once you get there, you can open back up and you can start to experiment and find where your trade-offs are. What's worth it to you? What do you gain? What do you lose? All that kind of stuff.
Here's what I would say to that. And I was talking to Zane Griggs about this. So I think what people need to get comfortable doing, you use the word experiment. I think what people need to get really comfortable doing is never stop experimenting with your diet. Always be curious about your diet. Always be tinkering with your diet. And the reason why I say that is because, again, what happens, I think, in a lot of these spaces is people find something that works. Let's say it's carnivore. And carnivore is definitely a transformational diet. They feel amazing. They create maybe an Instagram profile about their carnivore journey. They're posting pictures. It becomes their identity. They make friends in carnivore spaces, right? It almost becomes their identity, the religion, all these things. Kind of the diet. That's why I say don't marry your diet. That's what kind of happens, I think, to a lot of people in these spaces. And what happens is there at some point the body will adapt. Your body's constantly changing, evolving. Cells are turning over. It'll come a point where like that diet might not be working with you, but then you like carnivore harder. And I think that's what a lot of people do. And I think a lot of people need to get comfortable with breaking up with their diet and then massaging in different strategies to keep pushing the needle forward or keep progressing forward in the way that they're progressing. And I think just human beings in general, they have a really hard time. They really have a hard time doing that because it's, I made a post about this like a handful of weeks ago. Do you remember that like bad relationship you were in where maybe it wasn't bad, but maybe you were dating a girl and you were dating her for maybe 6 months or a year too long when you know early on that it wasn't the right girl for you, or things just weren't working out, but you stick through it for another 6 months or a year because what you remember is all of the good times in the beginning, right? That's what happens with people on these diets. They're so transformational in the beginning that they cling to them and they want the diet to work so badly. But I think in a lot of these cases, the diet it's not necessarily the diet. I think it's the body striving for homeostasis, and the body will naturally regulate out and evolve and adapt to the diet. And you have to be comfortable switching up the diet. And I think going back to what you were saying, you have to be comfortable tinkering and experimenting and getting comfortable, like almost treat like what you eat and what you ingest as not like a religion, but a hobby that you're always trying to get better at. Like, is there anything better than pursuing, not perfection, but pursuing, always trying to like pushing your health forward and tinkering with your diet. In my opinion, I don't think there's anything better. Like what you ingest into your body is like numero uno, right? Like along with sleep and exercise. So I would suggest people get comfortable playing around with your diet, because your body's going to adapt, your body's going to evolve. At some point, you're going to have to break up with your diet and massage in different things. But as long as you practice these different low carb variations, it kind of keeps you moving in the direction that you want to be moving. That's just my 2 cents.
I love that. No, I really like that. And I like that analogy as well. So thank you for sharing that. I did want to talk to you about the exercise piece. Maybe, talking about CrossFit, what got you into CrossFit? What made you stay with CrossFit for so long? And is it something you still do? How has your thinking around exercise evolved over time?
Yeah, that's a good one. So when I was out in Vegas, my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, we moved out to Las Vegas initially because my dad called me up one day. He lived out in Vegas, and I was finishing up San Diego State. And he was basically like, yo, I went to the doctor and I have lung cancer and I've got like 18 months to live. And so I looked at my girlfriend. I was like, yo, do you want to like come with me to Vegas? So she quit her job. We moved out to Vegas. I basically took care of my dad until he passed away. And when I was out there, my buddy told me about this thing called CrossFit. And he was like, yo, I think you would love this. These guys do handstand push-ups and pull-ups and like everything that you used to do back in college. And I was like, okay, that's crazy. So I found the closest gym to me. I went in there and I did my first workout, and I'll never forget it. It was a workout called, are you familiar at all with CrossFit?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So it was this short workout called half Cindy with balls. So there's a famous CrossFit workout called Cindy, and it's 20 minutes of 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 15 air squats. And it's, there's a lot of CrossFit workouts with that type of programming, but this workout was 10 minutes, and it was 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and then 15 wall balls. So you had like a medicine ball that you were throwing up at a target. I was like 3 rounds into this workout, and it completely destroyed me, like in under the 10-minute period. Like I basically tapped out, and my body went into like a state of shock that it had never gone into. And this whole entire idea of constantly varied functional movements performed at a high intensity completely blew my mind and sold the hell out of me. And I was like, this is it. This is how people need to be working out. This is the magic sauce. And I was like bought in. So became a trainer, and I got all these crazy certifications, like kettlebell certifications, mobility certifications with Kelly Starrett, weightlifting, Olympic lifting certifications. And so I was big in the CrossFit space for a while out there, was training classes. Then me and the 2 guys that owned the gym that I was at, we opened up a second gym in Vegas. And so I went on that run, and it was fun, man. We had a blast, and like I was just doing really what I loved. But I had the opportunity to move back to San Diego and get into the tech world, and I took that route. But I think back to my CrossFit journey a lot, because it's how I work out today. Now, I don't do like CrossFit specifically, but and I can run you through like what my day-to-day looks like, but I do definitely use a lot of the methodologies and the framework of CrossFit to program my own workouts and what I do at home, because I've got a garage gym and it's super simple and easy and convenient. I recommend go to a gym if you need to go to the gym. But in my opinion, there's nothing more effective and efficient than having a place in your house that you can go and work out and just get it done really quick. And so over the years, I've purchased equipment and bought more and more equipment, and now I've got a garage gym, and that's been doing my thing. But yeah, I don't know do you want me to go into like kind of what I'm doing now, or?
Yeah, I would love to. And in the context of something I talked to Bronson about before, of like most people hear CrossFit and they think it looks fun, great community, people hanging out together, gonna get hurt. You're definitely gonna get injured. So I want to hear about what you do, and I want to hear how you manage that piece, which is so critical of staying healthy and not getting injured.
Yeah, that's a good one. So there are definitely some movements I just don't do anymore, because I don't feel like they're, I don't how do I say this? I don't necessarily feel for like where I'm at, my age, I don't know if they're necessary. And one of those movements would be like a snatch, right? Like I just don't necessarily need to be snatching anymore just because of like shoulders and those types of things. I do other Olympic movements like cleans, deadlifts, but basically here's kind of my 2 cents, and I've talked to Bronson about this a lot. I think what people really need to do is focus on the compound lifts, right? And from a longevity perspective. And we can talk about reps and weights and ranges I think people should do, but like people need to deadlift, people need to squat, people need to do like a heavy press, like an overhead press. I think those are key movements. And then for men specifically need, in my opinion, if I can lay out to you 10 movements I would do for life, I'll lay them out to you. 2 of those movements would be pull-ups and dips. The pull-up and the dip is basically the squat and the deadlift for the upper body. They are non-negotiable movements. And if you think about it, if you want to have a good physique, strive to be able to do 10 strict pull-ups and 10 strict dips. And if you imagine someone that can do 10 strict pull-ups and 10 strict dips, they're going to have a decent looking physique, right? And so I've got movements like that, like pull-ups, dips, weighted lunges, back squats, kettlebell swings that I will massage in a weekly rotation, and I'll do them, throughout the week. And it allows me to stay somewhat athletic as I'm getting older. It allows me to stay somewhat athletic and explosive, but also allows me to look the way that I want to look, have the type of strength I want to, like natural functional strength that you want to have. Like that's what a deadlift, in my opinion, gives you. It's like basically the most functional movement you could possibly do, because every human being needs to be able to pick something up off the ground. Like I highly suggest people do deadlifts. And I can recommend some weight ranges for sure here, but those movements, those compound functional movements are like the core of my workouts. And then I'm massaging things like kettlebells and, running into the workouts throughout the week in order to give myself some variety.
Yeah. I love that. No, I think that's great. I have in my mind a very similar list of like 5 or 10 different exercises that I would want somebody to do for the rest of their life. And in whatever modality possible. Are you very familiar with high intensity training, like a super slow style training? Do you ever work some of that into your programming as well?
Yes, well, both actually. So I'll have days where I'll do like a HIIT workout, for instance. And I used to do like a lot of Tabata stuff where you do like 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest. I think that stuff's great. Like on my cardio days, and this is a very CrossFit-esque workout, like one of my favorite workouts, and I usually do this on a Friday. It's 5 rounds, run 400 meters. So I run down to the end of the street and back, and then I do 20 kettlebell swings, rest 1 minute. And that is a crusher, because the running mixed with the American kettlebell swing where you're going all the way up, the Russian kettlebell swing is where you're going halfway. The American kettlebell swing, because of the range of motion is so much further, it is a cardio blaster. And if you want to get like a great workout in 20 minutes, and here's another thing for your listeners, the simplest workouts are the most effective. 1,000%. Don't go into the gym and say, I'm going to put together a workout or a circuit of like 7 different things. No, like 3 at the max, 4 at the absolute max. But typically what I find is like mixing like running and kettlebell work for cardio, that jacks the heart rate. And then you add in like a minute of rest. You do 5 rounds of that. You're done in 20 minutes. Your cardio is done. You don't need to run 5, 7, 10, 15 miles, which I used to do. I used to race like a handful of years ago. I got into marathon running and half marathons. I was running a half marathon every month. I like got so into it. But it's like, man, for longevity purposes, right? 5 rounds, run 400 meters, 20 kettlebell swings, rest a minute. It is perfect workout. And then if you don't have a kettlebell or don't know how to do them, so it's fine. Throw in burpees instead of kettlebell swings. There's a bunch of different movements you can throw in to give that cardio effect. But the simplest workouts are the most effective. hands down.
Got it. No, I love that. On the kettlebell, this is maybe a little bit semantic, but I'm
Sure.
curious. In my kettlebell certification, they told us to never go fully overhead with a kettlebell because of shoulder impingement issues. Is that something you ever come across?
No. And so I went through the CrossFit kettlebell seminar with Jeff Martone. And so kettlebells come from Russia, right? Traditional kettlebell swings, they don't go overhead. CrossFit kind of made that up. But in my opinion, there's two different ways in which you would use that kettlebell swing. So the Russian kettlebell swing, you're doing that for explosiveness and power, and more of like power output, right? The American kettlebell swing, like I was saying, going all the way up, yes, there is a range of motion there, but in my opinion, that's a range of motion you want to have, and that's a range of motion you want to work. It's the same concept of when people say, oh, when you're doing dips, don't go below parallel. No, go below parallel. It's safe. Now don't just start doing dips and drop all the way down. Yeah, you're probably going to hurt your shoulder. But when you're doing a dip, and this is same thing with the kettlebell, you want to be able to increase your range of motion. The more range of motion that you have, the safer and stronger your shoulder joint is going to be. 1,000%. So if you're doing dips, work on getting lower in the dip, because the lower in your dip also is going to give you more of a stretch in the pec, right? That's what's really going to tell the muscle fiber and make the muscle stronger. But if you have a good range of motion and you have deep range of motion in a dip, you're just going to make your shoulder joint so much more flexible and stronger. And it's the same thing with the kettlebell. Like, yes, some people might not be able to go overhead, but what I would suggest doing, and this is what I do, is before I'm doing American kettlebell swings, I really work the shoulder, right? I do like dislocates with a PVC pipe. Like I take the PVC pipe all the way around. And honestly, the best shoulder exercise, in my opinion, for warming the shoulders up and opening up the range of motion is an overhead squat. Put a barbell on your back, take a wide grip, put the barbell over your head, and do 10 overhead squats. For men that are not used to it, it's very comfortable, because men are typically like very top heavy, strong shoulders, hunched over. It's hard for them to get in that position. But it is, in my opinion, the overhead squat, it's the best movement for the shoulders to open up that range of motion, so you can do overhead kettlebell swings, American kettlebell swings, without the pain.
I need more of what you have when it comes to examining all of these different things, because I get so myopic, or I get taught a certain thing. Like in 2007, I get my first personal training certification. They teach you how to squat, and that's the one way that you squat. And if you don't squat that one way, you're not squatting right. Or the kettlebell certification, never go up past shoulder height. Well, people do it. So I just wish I wouldn't get so locked into certain concepts. Like we talked about, super slow and high intensity training. The idea there is you don't need to move quickly with a high amount of weight, thus producing tons of power to create explosive movement. You can do that very, very slowly, but that doesn't mean that there's not value in also doing that as well. And so I like that you are able to dance around, just like with the diet, the exercise program, and include lots and lots and lots of different things, and stay healthy, avoid injury, that kind of thing. I really like your approach there.
Well, the big thing here too, going back to what you're saying about the squat stance, and then we can maybe bring it around to the kettlebells too. It's like you do different things for different effects. Like the Russian kettlebell swing is really there for speed and power and strength. You want to pick up a heavier kettlebell, and you want to do 10, 15, 20 swings with a heavy kettlebell, Russian style. If you're doing metabolic conditioning, I would suggest lowering the weight and then grabbing a kettlebell you can do 20 times. And you'll get a completely different effect out of it, because the range of motion taxes the muscle groups, the amount of time that the weight is in the air and floating through time and space. It completely hits the muscle groups in a different way. Same thing with the squat stance, right? And I was talking to John Russin about this. So everyone is built, like anatomically, everyone is different, right? Some people are tall, some people are short, some people have like wider shoulders, smaller hips. We have this thing called a barbell. You put plates on a barbell, and it sends, and I learned this from John Russin. It sits, I hope I get this right, about 8 8.75 inches off the ground. When you have plates on a barbell and it's just sitting on the ground, you're about to do some deadlifts, it's about 8.75 inches off. I think I got that right. Think about it like this. That's the same height for everybody, right? So in terms of like the stance, the width, everything, everyone's got different anatomies. And so what I suggest doing is playing around for anybody, playing around with different squat stances, playing around with different widths on your feet for deadlifts. Some people, because of their hips and how just their alignment of their body, they might have to go more narrow. They might have to go a little bit wider. And when you're doing this too, you're going to hit the muscle group in a slightly different way. If you're doing a wide-legged squat, you're going to completely hit like your hamstrings in a totally different way than if you bring your feet together. It's going to be more quad focused, right? So play around with it, just like you just said, just like with the diets. It's just like different. We have these different tools on the diet side, and then we have these different tools on the exercise side for different effects. And I would say, use them all to build the strongest body that you possibly can,
I love that. Yeah. No, that's great advice. It's part of the reason why, like, if I'm training somebody, I will only correct somebody if it's very obvious that they're going to get hurt. Outside of that, I correct people very, very little, and nobody really seems to get hurt. So I like that. Yeah, I love your approach on all this stuff, man. I could talk to you for hours. It's been such a fun conversation, Max. I guess last question, where do you see your podcast going in the future? How do you see this journey continuing?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I don't know. Yeah, that's maybe the best way I can answer you, but I'll elaborate a little bit. When I started this, this kind of goes back. I don't know if we were recording yet when I said this, but when I turned 40, I started to get this. Hopefully this isn't too deep for the audience, but I started to get this like overwhelming sense of my mortality. Like I had noticed like the last decade went by really, really quick. And I wanted to really do something that I could give back to the world. And I know that might sound very cheesy or cliche or very corny to say, but I wanted to do something that I could give to people, not to like leave a mark or like leave my stamp. It wasn't that. It was, what it was? It was, how can I help my own species? And that was like weighing on my mind. And I was like, time is going by quick. And I'm noticing more and more, my kids are getting older. I'm getting older. The last decade went by quick. Like I said, what is an avenue I can take to help as many people as possible, just cut through the noise, and what can I contribute to my species? And I had this idea of starting the podcast, and I don't know why I didn't think of it 5-10 years ago. The timing's never going to be just right, but I was talking to my wife about it, and I'm just like, I think I'm going to do this. And she's like, okay, then do it. So I had my buddy tell me about the recording software. I ended up going on, playing around with it, started reaching out to some guests, and Bronson Dant gave me a shot. He gave me a shot. He was and I might have fumbled and bumbled across through that entire podcast trying to keep the thing together, man. But ever since then, it's been growing, and now we've done 26 episodes. And when I did this thing, I was like, I'm not going to put a time frame on this. Like, I'm not trying to get this as big as I can, as quick as I can to sell out or do anything. I don't sell anything. I don't coach anything. I'm really just trying to build the best podcast I can, create the best content I possibly can to help people. And I'm thinking of it as a long-term game, because one of the reasons why I got onto this was like, okay, what is something I can see myself doing for the next 10 years? Well, I work out every day like a maniac. I'm very particular about what I eat and how I live. I'm just going to make a podcast about it. And so I kind of did this too with like the long game in mind, something I can do for a long time. And I just did it. So to your question, where do I see it going? The answer is I kind of don't know. As long as it's going in the right direction and as many people as possible are getting value out of it, I'm going to still keep pumping the episodes, man.
Amazing. What an amazing answer. And like I told you in the beginning, you've done an amazing job from the very first episode. So
I appreciate that a lot.
And for people out there, you have no idea how meaningful it is for us podcasters, for the people who said yes when we reached out and asked if they would want to be hosted. And I guarantee you, Bronson didn't say, oh, I only will if you have 10,000 downloads. I only will if you promote my book. Like, people said yes to us, and it is so meaningful to us. It's hard to put into words. And so, yeah, we're so grateful for being able to go on this journey and share a podcast and get to interview so many amazing people. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Max. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Yeah, sure. Well, Instagram is probably where I'm most active. So it's at the Low Carb Consultant. You can find the Low Carb Consultant podcast on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. YouTube's the channel I'm trying to grow. And same thing on YouTube at the Low Carb Consultant. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll be sure to tag all that up, and let's stay in touch, man. I'd love to have you back on at some point to keep this conversation going. It's been wonderful to chat with you, and you're doing a great job. So keep up the great work, and thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy life to chat with us today. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you. Thanks for the invite. It was great chatting. I just thought I would say this real quick. Doing the podcast, you never really, I always kind of think about how I would answer certain questions. So it's just funny to be on the other side. So I appreciate you inviting me on, man. I had a blast.
Me too, man. You were a great guest, and yeah, it was an honor to host you today. So thank you so much.
Excellent,
And this
man.
has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.